Hey, everybody, this is Larry Little.
And I'm Melissa Jackson.
And you're listening to RelationShifts, and Robin is singing the song.
I hope you heard that.
And man, it is awesome. And we are glad that you're with us because we've got some exciting things to talk about today,
Oh,
huh?
my goodness. We have some exciting things today. I'm ready to get into it.
Oh, I know. I am too. But
and it is not
the
dad joke. I just want to put it out there real quick.
We will have the dad joke at the end.
Take place.
Because people clamor for it. They need it. They want it. They must have it. That's
know.
coming. Just stay tuned. You got to stay to the end, though, to get that, right?
That's right.
But we do have some things going on. Here we are in the summer months. And, if I really want to be cheesy, I'd say it's hot and we've got something hot to talk about.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yes. And we're looking forward to it. You just pass that on over here.
There you go. You want to? Yep.
So Larry, you have been working now 4 years, on some content.
Right.
And you had a release. The last book that you released really has springboarded you into this one. And this one is super exciting. I'm beside myself with this getting released because it is just a topic that is hot. It is very, very hot.
Well, I'll tell you, as we were preparing and talking about it, and Robin, our producer, has us a copy to look at and to see and actually, put our hands on, and it brought back a lot of memories. And I forget, Melissa, it's a lot of work.
But it's meaningful. It's meaningful work. Let me show you this. Let me turn it around because it's big stuff. Crossing generational lines. And the picture on the book, the art, it says it all. In fact, you've got to get this so you can really see it, because you need to know what pictures stand out to you. And if you're not careful, you won't see a picture at all. You won't see any pictures, but they are on here, and you need to be able to know which ones do you identify, because it will tell a story in this book that you need to read this book to find out more about what it's about.
Well said.
Which we're talking about it today.
And before we move off of the cover that you look at and the different ways of communication across generational lines and the ones that you relate to, our very own Robin Brzezinski designed that cover. I have to give a shout out because I'm so impressed with it. And, and before we kind of hired some things out for some of our books, and they were fine. This is awesome. I mean, I don't want to talk about it too much because somebody might, try to make her an offer or something as a designer, a graphic designer.
They better not. Personality will come out. And definitely me.
I will turn into a
this book, she just captures it. With her mind, she can think across the generational lines, and it's a powerful book, and I'm really looking forward to talking about it. But before we even do that, I want us to have some stats, because our stats tell us, prep us to understand part of the why behind this. And then we're going to talk about the why, because we always need to include the why, because you're so purpose driven. We need to know your why of, what's the dilemma that you bring some solutions to and some real nuggets to. But let's talk about some of the stats. Here's the first one. We'll start off with this. And this is from the APA, which is the American Psychiatric Association. So they tell us the mental health stats. They give us that data. 1 in 3 adults in the United States feel lonely at least once a week.
Isn't that amazing? I mean, think about 1 in 3. Are you kidding me?
Yes, and feel lonely. So they recognize that enough to be able to give that data.
And part of that is we don't know how to cross the line to communicate to those who are different than we are generationally. A lot of that, just think about the older generations and the younger generations have no idea how to bridge that gap. And that was one of the premises for this book, is that I really wanted to think through, wow, a lot of people are lonely. What if they could talk to each other? What if they could communicate to each other? What if they could connect to each other? So I think the need is just really, really, I mean, it's obvious, it's huge.
So we've lost that ability to connect, and we need to learn. We need to learn.
And then you have to follow that up and go, why do you think we've lost it in this next stat?
Which is from Pew Surveys. And it says 4 in 5 Americans believe access to the internet and social media has made people more divided in their political opinions.
It is amazing. Go back to the cover of the book. You see all of these communication styles for generations, and they do it different in every generation. But with all of this communication that we have developed, innovated, created as a human race, and we are more polarized politically, more polarized relationally, separated. We'll talk about it in a minute. We struggle to connect with, yet we have all of these communications, yet the generations are continuing to suffer and not be able to, they're no longer able to have that connection and engagement with one another. And I thought, wow, so it's not about having the tools. It's not about technology. It's not about any of that. We have to realize and we become aware of what it is, what the lie is. We'll talk about in a minute, and then what can we do about it?
So there's a lie. Very interesting concept that you're going to share with us. Here's the last one in resumebuilder.com. Here's our survey that 3 in 10 hiring managers. So this is really interesting. They avoid hiring Gen Z candidates.
Yep, heard it this week.
They avoid that.
Yep, they do. I heard it from a manager this week. They don't want to fool with Gen Zers, and I said, why? And he said, because they can't. They don't come to work. They can't communicate. They don't know how to engage. They're not. And he said, so we don't have the energy or the desire to have them to be a part of our company. We don't want them. Once again, buying into the myth that all Gen Zers are that way. But still, there's a huge issue here with the Gen Zers and an alpha following right behind coming into the workforce, and it's a real problem.
So you said there's a lie.
There's a lie.
You said, tell us about that.
So we have been taught that, we can't cross the line to speak into the lives so that they can hear us of other generations. We've been taught the younger generation, they don't listen, they're hard-headed, they only think of themselves, they're impatient, they don't, even this Gen Z myth, they're not good workers, they're not reliable, and then conversely, on the other side, it's the older generations are stuck in their own ways. They're not innovative. They don't want to change. They don't want to grow. They're not interested in anything but the way that they've always done it. And there's nothing we can do about it. We just have this disagreement. That
is what it is.
It is what it is. And that's just a lie. It's just not true. Here's the thing. For centuries, there's been a disconnect between generations. I mean, this is nothing new. So we're not out here creating something new. I'm just taking the wisdom and insight that we've learned from past generations, from worlds that existed long ago, where this issue still was the same, even in today's technology, where we're sending people to the moon and in outer space, and we have self-driving cars and all these things, and AI is amazing. We still have the same issue that they had back in years, centuries ago, and that is that generations that are different can't communicate, engage, and speak to one another. And they bought into the lie. Well, once you reach a certain age, you just can't. I don't understand them, so I don't understand them, so therefore I can't communicate with them. It's a lie.
So there is a lie.
Yep.
And this lie drove you to write this book. What is so? Bring us to your why. What? For us.
So, this book, Crossing Generational Lines, is the title really came from the previous book, which was, Crossing the Line. Mm-hmm. We talked about crossing the line from your personality standpoint, from task-driven people to people-driven people and all that. And I got to thinking about that, and I thought, well, my goodness, if we can cross that line and learn things to understand those who are different from us from a personality standpoint, what about those from different generations? Because I saw families not be able to talk to one another. I saw grandparents not be able to really connect and understand their grandchildren or even their own children. So from a relational standpoint, I saw these generational gaps and the misconceptions. It's horrific if you really kind of listen to what one generation is saying about another. And what the Zers are saying about the boomers, what the millennials are saying about the Xers. You don't have to look far to see it.
Right,
You just get on social media. And I thought, that is sad. It does not have to be that way. The problem is, as technology has grown and our inability to have face-to-face conversations, to have relationships, to listen, engage, to whatever, has decreased because we've got technology in our hand. Therefore, our social skills, our people skills are continuing to decline, so the gap's getting bigger.
But it doesn't have to be that way.
It doesn't have to be that way. Let me read to you what I wrote and why it's important. This is kind of my why behind the book, if you will. And it's just a quick little couple of sentences, but I said this in the book and why it's important. That's the name of this chapter. The longer I live, the more I realize how much I don't know. I am, however, committed to the journey of crossing generational lines in an effort to connect with those who are different than me. That commitment is the heart of this book, with the title Crossing Generational Lines, capturing what we must do to close these gaps. And then I asked the reader, I hope that you decide to join me on the quest of breaking down barriers and increasing connection with those who are younger and older than us. That's the why. Breaking down barriers and increasing connections. So that's why I wrote it.
So we want you to join us today. We're going to walk through and talk about each of the different generations and have you describe those, have you help us understand from your perspective, from your why, what do they look like? And then we're going to have a chance to dive deeper in some of the episodes to come so we can really dig in and pull away the nuggets that we need to so that we can have the relationships that we want to have. So here's the overview. We're starting off with actually a generation that kind of gets lost in the shuffle or left out.
Right.
So talk to us about, you started the content with the greatest generation.
I did, because, and let me just say a quick disclaimer. The information that we're about to talk about is my information that I've researched and our team researched. You may find some things differently. This is our generalization. This is the way our take on it. So let me just say that. So from our perspective, this will hopefully help us. First, we have to understand the generations. We have to understand, and when I say understand, we have to be aware of who they are. Then we can talk about how to cross. So that's the effort here. So that greatest generation was from 1901 to 1927. I had to put them in, Melissa. Although a lot of them are no longer with us. Most of them are not with us. But at the same time, they were incredibly important through the process of generational growth and development, and what we've learned. They sacrificed. They were called to duty. They were in those wars, the world wars that really saved our country and many others. They were resilient. They really had a heart for the collective good of others. They weren't selfish. They were the greatest generation. They were brave. They were heroes. And here's how they connected through. That's all they had back in, think about it, the early 1900s. Face-to-face communication. They were very direct. There wasn't a lot of fluff in their personal. They had letters, but it was hard to write those letters, and even harder to get the letters to where you wanted them to be to the recipient, because it took weeks to get there many times. So they were very intentional about what they communicated and how they communicated. When I read some of the letters that they wrote, it was amazing. I was so impressed with their intelligence, in the English language and how they wrote and how they framed their sentences and those kinds of things. They were very disciplined. Later, they had landlines. Some of them, many never had a landline, but some did. So that's I wanted to honor them. I realize many of them are no longer here, but I just could not write a book about generations without saying thank you to the greatest generation.
I'm glad you started there. I think it's so good to remember and recall as you build on generation after generation. So then the next one is the silent generation. So this is 1928 to about 1945.
Yeah, this generation followed the greatest generation, so they were taught to respect. They were taught to have discipline and to be disciplined. They were taught to value stability because their parents fought for it. Their parents didn't have that. They were taught to keep the peace, and because their parents had experienced so much war and hardship, and it was still hard. And as we look at the Great Depression and all those things that were around that time, the silent generation were taught, don't cause trouble, keep your head down, do your work. And that's basically what they did. They created a wonderful stability for us. and they had landlines. Many in rural areas, did not, but most did. And then there were some mobile phones later in their life, if you could believe it. Nothing like what we're talking about now. So by and large, their communication was still face to face. They valued letter writing. They knew how important that was, and they were really good at it as well because they learned that from their parents. So it's a whole different take on communication. Communication to the silent generation was intentional. They would be horrified to see the rhetoric that is on the social media of today. It just would they would have. It makes no sense to them. They don't get that. Why? Would be the big question. So, an incredible generation that laid the groundwork for us.
I have family members that fall in some of that time frame. They have worked so hard to be able to use technology, and it's always such a model when you see somebody that's in a different generation and they're working to try to stay relevant in the next generation, in the other
it's
generations.
So good. And like you, my parents are 86 and they're in this generation. And when the phone rings and it's like, hey Larry, I know what's coming next. Can you help me with this? This phone just won't work. They're trying, and I'm going to give them a lot of credit, but it's foreign to them. They don't get it. They want to use it.
Yeah.
But there's like a wall. It's like okay, well, we can go this far, and then we don't know what to do. What do we do with this?
Yeah. So from a technology standpoint,
right.
They're struggling. But I bet in the relationships, tell me about that. What do you experience?
They love, and I have to I have to remind myself of this. And, just recently I got my mom and dad, put them in the car and just drove. Just drove them around. They're both in an assisted living in our area. So got them, put them in the car, and we rode, and they loved it. Why was that? Because this generation valued time with others. They would go out for the Sunday afternoon, drives. Their life was slower than what we were doing. So they value that time that they spend with their children and grandchildren, and driving around looking and reminiscing meant so much to them. How many times do we stop to drive around with no intent? So it's just a reminder of what they value.
That's so good. So the next are the baby boomers. These are those that are born during that 1946 to 1964 time frame.
Yeah, this is where it got cranked up. They really value work ethic. They figured out, because of the silent generation and the greatest generation that created the stability, this generation figured out if we work hard, we can make some stuff. We can make some money. We can get some things. We can have our stuff. This generation loves their stuff. They are not afraid of work.
Furniture.
Oh my
still
God.
have pieces of furniture.
Yes, and so they accumulate things. This generation, and they do work hard. They're incredibly hard workers. But this is where life really speeds up. This generation kind of used technology to speed up life, and they understand mobile phones. Mobile phones came into existence. They kind of get that. They still use face-to-face interactions, though. The baby boomers understand that because of their parents. They were introduced to email, and so they use and are comfortable. Most of them understand how to use and use emails frequently, especially those on the latter end of the baby boomers. Interestingly, baby boomers still wrote letters. They still mailed letters in the mail. If you're a boomer, send cards are important. Sending cards through the snail mail.
Yes.
are are really important. And, they don't understand why that's not a thing anymore. Think about it. How many cards we used to get for your birthday, like real cards, and how many we get now. But they love it. Yeah. So as long as they're around, we're going to get cards, I think.
And so from a relational standpoint, how do you see the baby boomers? How do they relate? How do they connect?
So baby boomers really want to know, and this is somewhat of a myth and somewhat there's truth in it. What's in it for me? They're the ones that kind of came up with, I'm going to work. I want, what's the phrase? He who has the most toys wins. That's kind of what they grew with, but they love. But from a personal relationship, they're strong on accountability. If you say something, you better do it. You better show accountability. It's about proving your worth. It's about being able to be disciplined. And they have that. And don't believe that myth. That's not he who has the most toys. That doesn't define them. That's just a myth that some people. There's some truth that though they did or realize because of the stability of the generations before them that they could achieve some things. They could accumulate some things. And they did.
So the next we have the Gen X. The Gen X, 1965 to 1980. So, the baby boomers, here they are with stuff and connecting. They want to hand down furniture. They want their children to take that furniture and use that furniture, and they're supposed to, and they're supposed to save everything.
That's right.
They're supposed to, and here the Gen X comes along. And how did you paint the Gen X?
Well, the Gen X, they love their own independence. They're very self-reliant, but they have a kind of a realistic view of their parents because many of the boomers, both parents work. That's where both, dual work really kind of came to be a thing. So the Gen Xers were kind of taking a step back and looking at that. And with the rise of the internet, remember, they're very familiar with it. That it became their primary mode for communication. Email was, they're used to it. They grew up with it. Mobile phones, they grew up with it. Text messages became a thing. And so they kind of leaned into the technology. Gen Xers, they're okay with it. They understand it. They like it. Instant messaging came, remember AOL in the day and that kind of thing. So they began to be very comfortable with it. But what they don't want to do, they look at the boomers and they said, we see what having all the toys cost relationally. Sometimes we see maybe that was a strain on your marital relationship or in the family so Gen Xers took a little step different that you'll see in the millennials. It actually didn't come out until the millennials. Because they parented differently. So they said, we're going to parent a bit differently and we're going to do some things a bit differently. And interestingly, this group kind of gets lost in the shuffle. They kind of get lost from the baby boomers who made a distinct turn from, because of the stability, they could make a distinct turn from where their parents were and what they valued. The boomers did, and the Xers, when they came along, they saw that turn, and the pendulum started kind of in their minds to swing back just a little bit. They said, "Wait a minute, let's put some realism into this thing. We don't have to have all the toys. We can use technology somewhat." And relationally, you see the struggle begin to occur with Gen Xers, with communication, with connection. It's interesting because this is where technology begins to increase, and this is where the relational piece kind of begins to. It's like the Xers, and I want to be careful. I do not want to overgeneralize, but where respect was everything for the boomers. You respect your elders, you respect their parents. Gen Xers begin to have a little different mindset about that.
I'm a Gen X, and so, I'm identifying with what you're saying and, kind of caught in the middle because, yes, even in parenting, how you were parented from boomers, you just naturally begin to carry some of that into your parenting. And then you're realizing, though, you're not doing that. So you're doing it, but then you're not doing it because there's this new wave of parenting out there. Yeah. And, all these things are kind of in this no man's land where you're figuring it out and you're trying to use what worked, but also figure out what do you want it to look like and how does it need to work.
We break all that down in the book too, and talk about those differences and how different parenting styles, in the 60s and 70s came to be, and how that's so different than the 60s and 50s, 50s and 60s. And So Generation X comes on board, kind of taking that pendulum of he who has the most toys wins, kind of taking that materialism and going back the other direction.
So then you have the millennials. We'll keep moving forward, and that's 1981 to 1996. So things really start to change here.
You really see it. It started with the Xers, but it just put the explanation point after the millennials. They said, look, we're going to do things way different. We're going to be about purpose. We're going to be about working together. We want feedback. We do not want to climb the corporate ladder professionally. We're not interested. And this is overgeneralization. But we
want experiences, right?
We want experiences. Yeah. We want to grow in our who we are. And the only reason that they could have that mindset, if you think about it, on the, you just think about our need hierarchy of, those older generations, they needed to survive. They needed food, shelter, they needed things that.
It's basic needs.
That's it. Yeah. Then they provide that stability. Boomers come along, even more wealth. And then Generation X kind of looks at that and takes it and says, okay, I'm not gonna focus on it. But the only reason they could not focus on it and raise the millennials in this is because of the stability that the older generations provided. So because of that financial, economic stability, generally speaking, millennials could focus on purpose. When I say purpose, they could focus on, I want to go to work for someone that is social minded, that has, they have interest in helping the world and kind of an altruistic view. And I don't want to work for a place that has a traditional, have to come in and dress a certain way in the office. They're the ones that brought in the whole casual office look and coming in I remember one time I went to a large tech company several years ago, and it's full of millennials, and I'm looking and I'm seeing this, this mom come in. She's got, her child in a stroller coming to work. I look over here. Here's another guy coming in flip flops and shorts and a t-shirt.
They have ping pong table in the rec room.
They have a massage room. You remember me telling you? Seriously, Lena, a nap room. You need to go take a nap. I'm like, good night. You have, incredible food courts but so the millennials brought that in. They ushered in that casual feel of we don't have to have the formality that the other generations had. And then they're very comfortable with technology. The whole thing, text message, social media became a thing. Email is now mail. That's that's all that they know. Video calls kind of began to take off, and they understood messaging apps. They used to, instead of talking, now we're messaging, WhatsApp, Snapchat, and others. They use those every day. Just like, instead of saying, hey, I saw something cool, they just take a picture of it and Snapchat it, and it sends a message to whoever they care about.
Do you think their relationships began to be short connections?
Oh, yeah.
What would you say?
Yeah, they began to look very differently. Their attention span began to, we noticed, really begin to drop as well. Their relationships really began to center. This is where it began. The relationships began to center around technology. And they tried to have relationships through technology. It's where dating apps kind of took off, and now it is, if you're single, you're expected to get on some type of dating app to find. It's how you find your person. So all of that to baby boomers, are like, and generate what? I mean, think about it. Would I ever think about getting on a computer to try to find somebody to date if I was single? I mean, it seems almost immoral, but no, it's not. It's just exactly how they function. And millennials ushered all that in, a large generation, and had they were responsible for one of the major shifts in our generational, ecosystem.
I remember I had a friend, my age, and they met through a dating website, and she didn't want to tell anybody.
You won't tell anybody.
Back then, that was just something that, you did not want to do. That was a little embarrassing.
Yeah.
But instead, it's the common thing now. So let's move to Gen Z. So this is 1997 to 2012.
So this generation is causing all kind of havoc. We don't know what to do with this generation. The first generation, I mean, they are totally immersed into the technology platforms and social medias. They are living it. They love it. They were born with it. They cannot imagine. You know, it was so funny. I've even asked some of the Gen Zers. I'd have a old Tommy landline telephone cord, you know, and I'd hold, you know, remember the little curly things, and I would hold one up, and I'd say, as I was doing some of this work and speak, I said, "Do you guys know what this?" No. You don't know what this is, you know, and of course all the boomers and the Generation X and even the millennials, you know, kind of knew. They have, what is that? What is that? So they don't have any idea about the old way of communication, but it's causing havoc. They're so immersed in that, and they're so used to it that they use it as shortcutting their relationships. In other words, I'm going to text. You can't see facial expressions. You can't see nonverbal expressions. You can't hear tone inflection, but they do that all the time. And they try to create those things with emojis and that kind of thing, and it just doesn't work.
And little code.
Little code, that's right.
It means something, you know, these letters mean something, you know, a whole sentence to them.
That's right. Emojis and GIFs, and then their acronyms. Yeah. And what we're seeing is that it's having a serious effect on the ability to have deep, meaningful relationships with someone. You can't just put the phone down and walk away when you have a disagreement with someone that you're married to, or you care about, or the friend. You've got to be able to work through those. In the workplace, it's scaring employers to death because they don't give a rip about you know, the money, so to speak. They want to come in. Millennials started this trend, and the Gen Zers are carrying it through. We're going to come in and tell you how to run your company. You know?
Well, and some employers will say they do care about the money. They want to come in and make what somebody with 20 plus years is making.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And when I said they don't care about the money, I meant versus they want the power and control, and they think it's worth a lot of money. You know, in other words, we used to be willing, or the other generation, you know, baby boomers would be willing to work hard for less because they wanted to make. You know, we work hard with it so we could save and make
the opportunity.
No. Gen Zers want it right now, and they want power and control. And so the millennials. Millennials started this. It's interesting, and it's we have the answer. This is the perception. This is the myth. We have the answers. We're going to come in and tell you how to run your company. We expect to be promoted in 2 years. We'd like to be president, and we want to make, you know, six figures very quickly. And so, do you want to hire me? If it's not that, it's you know, I'm going to work from home 4 days a week or 5, and I don't see any reason why I need to be in the office. So I'm just going to work from home. And I don't want to be on a team, and I don't want all those things scare employers to death about this Gen Zers as they're coming up and they're getting ready and they're in the workplace, and so we've got to figure out, you know, how do we connect? How do we talk to those Gen Zers? Because right behind them is the Gen Alpha. And, you know, we talk a little bit about Gen Alphas in the book because they are, you know, early indicators are they're going to follow, and they'll swing that pendulum back just a little bit from Gen Z, but they're going to be creative. But what they want now. They want it very quickly because they have absolutely known nothing but instant gratification through technology. So we won't hang on a lot there, except that this is the first generation that truly has just saturated and lived in the technology world. So I think we've got to be prepared for them. How do we connect with them in our homes? How do we help them? And they're gonna want more personalization. They're gonna you're gonna see it tick back a little bit. So how do we support that and help them? What do we do with these generations? How do we cross these generations to have meaningful conversations? We've just made a lot of generalizations today, by the way, when we did this, because we just wanted to set the table for how the generations are different.
So we've gone through this, and we've quickly gone through to set that platform that you're talking about, to set that path forward. And as you were talking, of course, my mind is spinning and thinking about the relationships that they have and how it's so different each generation. What's important to them and what they value, even from a relational standpoint, it's so different. And if we just don't think about it, if we just act in our normal behavior, we're going to not be able to connect. We're going to not be able to really identify, have anything in common. And if we're not careful, there's no reason for us to connect with somebody that's in a different generation, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. And we've got to get to the mindset that we don't have to value the same things to connect. I can value something very different than you and your generation, but yet you and I can still connect and have a conversation.
And that's very hard. It's a very profound statement, but that is very hard to create application around. And so as we kind of turn the corner, finish up today and setting the tone for the next episodes that we're going to have, we want to give a shift. We want to talk about, what can a shift look like as you think about all these different generations and where we're headed. We're headed to relational conversation. That's right. And how do you have relationships?
And, Melissa, maybe we have to come back and dig on this a little bit more. I know our time is gone, but that shift from, they're different, so I can't, they value things that are different. They're different than I am. They think differently. Let's shift from that to focus, shift from focusing on that they're different to focusing on, they developed differently. Their environment was different. They grew up different to value different things, and that's okay.
So instead of writing them off, instead of not connecting, instead of feeling so uncomfortable because we have nothing in common, we can understand that they develop differently. So therefore, I need something. I need some tool. I need something to help me connect.
That's right.
Because these relationships are important.
They are important, and every generation has their own set of challenges, their own pressures, their own things they have to overcome. They're just different, and it's shaped in who they are. So we're going to dig into that. We'll talk about some specific people from the different generations and what they have said as you and I visit and talk about it. I think it's really important. Hopefully today we've learned a bit about who these generations are, kind of generally who they are. But and I want to debunk this lie off the bat. It's not that we can't connect across generational lines. We can. The truth is, the biggest barrier to generations is not age. It's not age at all. That's what I said in the book a minute ago, that, the older I get in life, the more I know how much I don't know and how much I need to learn. So it's not about age. It's the belief. If we believe that age is a barrier, we're done for. If we really think it's a generational gap, it's all about age, we are sunk, if you will, because there's nothing we can do about our age. I can't turn that time clock back. But if we think, wait a minute, it's not about generational age. It's about relationship. It's about relating to others and learning the tools to help us connect across those generational lines.
So we're not stuck.
We're not stuck.
We're just unpracticed. We need some practice. So you need to get this book. You need this book so much. It's going to help you in your relationships. We all have relationships that are across generations, and this is going to help put some tools in your toolbox. We want you to get this. You can find it on Amazon. You can find it on eaglecenterforleadership.com. We want you to have it. Please get this.
I love it. And now, Melissa, I'm going to leave you with this. I know we've gone a little long, Robin. I know we've caused our producer some heartache, but thank you for hanging in there with us, Robin. And I'm going to reward you guys because I know we've gone a little long, so I've got the dad joke to end with. Are you ready for the dad joke?
Sounds like a really good one, too.
It's going to be good. It's going to be good. All right, here we go, guys. Listen, last night, my obese parrot died. Last night, my obese parrot died. Yeah. It was a huge weight off my shoulders. Each way.
And what generation are you from? Which one of those applies to you?
I love it. I think it's hilarious, and I bet those Gen Zers are laughing right now.
Oh my goodness! Hey,
thank you guys so much for listening in. We hope this has been helpful to you. We're excited about helping you to cross those generational lines, helping you to shift, if you will, and continue to make a difference in the lives of those you love, live with, and lead. We'll see you next time.
Little shifts that make a big difference. RelationShifts. Little shifts that make a big difference.